Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session on emerging ecosystems with a focus on incubation in South Africa. And the particular focus will be placed on tech incubators located within universities and how these facilitate not only startup formation and growth, but also linkages with industry and other ecosystems. My name is Ayanda Noma. I'm the Director for Innovation and Tech Transfer and Commercialization at the University of South Africa. I have the pleasure of facilitating this very important session. Over the past few years, we have seen a wave of incubation programs being established in our shores. There have been quite a number of incubators already and accelerators already operating in the country, primarily established by private sector actors. Right now, the first wave, of incubation programs, particularly in the public sector, was led by the Department of Trade and Industry, now it's Trade and Competition. The DTI, through its agency, the Small Enterprise Development Agency, launched a number of incubators focusing on manufacturing. Most of these incubators were located in what we refer to as universities of technology, perhaps known as universities of applied sciences in other parts of the world. Later on, other incubation programs were established, focusing on supporting the beneficiation of minerals. These were created along other support structures, such as what we refer to as technology stations, which were created by the then Chumisano Trust, and later on it folded into Technology Innovations Agency, right, which is the premier agency supporting technological innovations within the country. The role of these technology stations was to provide tech development support to startups. These were also by and large located within universities of technology. Over the past few years, we have witnessed another trend of the development of university-based incubators, some generalist, but by and large focused on high-tech startups. These have generated quite a lot of excitement in the country. Right? These are also supported, by multiple players, including SIDA as well as embassies, such as the Embassy of France in South Africa. This trend is driven largely by, amongst others, the following: the realization that some of the intractable challenges that we face in the country, such as poverty, unemployment, sluggish economic growth, can best be addressed by facilitating and supporting the development of small enterprises, especially technology-based enterprises. The solution to some of these social challenges, such as access to potable water, energy, affordable healthcare, may lie with the startups that are much more focused and agile enough to provide innovative solutions at local as well as regional levels. And thirdly, the recognition that with the drive for tech transfer and the fact that the early stage technologies produced by public higher education institutions may best be transferred through spin-out formation. However, one of the challenges that South Africa has is perhaps, maybe this point is quite arguable, I know, is perhaps the low entrepreneurial intensity and the general lack of entrepreneurs experience and actively looking to take technologies from universities to the market. There is therefore a need to provide support mechanisms to support aspirant entrepreneurs taking very risky technologies through uncertain development paths right through to the market. However, to talk more about these and other points, we have a panel of experts, much more knowledgeable and adept at these things more than I am. I will then briefly introduce them. Please help me welcome, our first panel member, Ms. Leslie Donna Williams. Leslie is the Chief Executive Officer of Wits University's Chimologong Precinct that aims to take African digital innovation to global markets through entrepreneurship and skills development. She further serves on the Gauteng Premier David Makura's 4IR and Digital Transformation Advisory Panel. She founded Impact Hub Johannesburg in 2020 to advance social entrepreneurship in Africa. Leslie has 20 years international experience in curating innovation ecosystems and networks with a primary focus on social and digital innovation. She moderates dialogues and facilitates change processes, creating common ground between diverse public and private stakeholders. Her work is celebrated through multiple awards. She participated in the 2018 inaugural class of the Obama Foundation's Leaders Program for Africa and was requested to be a mentor on the successive program. She is the recipient of the 2018 Inspiring 50 Awards, an initiative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to recognize the 50 most inspiring women in South Africa's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics industry. She became a recipient of the 2015 Unashamedly Ethical Award in the business category in 2011. Leslie's work regularly featured in the media and includes CNN, Fast Company, CNBC Africa, and Entrepreneur Magazine, USA. Audiences she has presented to include United Nations Women, African Union, Gauteng Provincial Government, and the South African Presidency's Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. A career highlight was moderating a dialogue on Nelson Mandela's legacy and the future of Africa between President Barack Obama and Graca Machel at the African American Museum in Washington. Welcome, Leslie. Look forward to the engagement today. And next panel's member is Axel Barrow, is a Free Trade Commissioner, South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. It's been that since the 1st of September 2017. Previously, he was Executive Vice President, International Networks with Business France, also a member of the Business France Executive Committee, and President of Formatech, which is a specialized international training institute. He holds a postgraduate degree in public international law from the University of Paris, Sorbonne, and has dedicated his entire career for the development of French trade and economy at an international level. He started his career at the COFACE, which is the French Export Credit Agency within the Department of Long-Term Guarantees. He then joined the Directorate of Foreign Economic Relations, now known as the Director General of Treasury, which forms part of the French Ministry of Economy, Finance and Industry. He also served in various senior level positions within the central administration of the ministry, one of which is the Near and Middle East desk, as well as the ministry's foreign offices abroad, Lebanon and Poland. He joined in 2014, he joined UB France, the French Trade Development Agency, and served first as the managing director of the agency's Marseille branch office, and thereafter as a UB France country manager in Turkey. His most recent posting abroad was as vice president of UB France North America and country manager for Canada. He is married and a father of three. His distinction includes France's Knight of the National Order of Merit. Welcome, Axel. We look forward to really having you as part of the conversation today. Right. Also help me to welcome our next panel member, which is Pranel Pascal. He's the innovation director at Lodge Lab, which is based at the university, incubator at the Stellenbosch University. He is currently the vice president of innovation at the Stellenbosch University Lodge Lab. Lodge Lab helps tech-based startups validate their value proposition and business model, create a growing commercial entity, and attract risk capital for scaling. At the Launch Lab, he has worked with more than 200 founders and teams and seen companies raise more than 200 million rands in risk capital. Branding expertise in the early stage pre-seed and seed South African startup system. Brendan has a strong background in developing leaders and startups to help them lead their teams towards financial success and thriving culture. He currently serves on several startup boards and is in the process of becoming a certified director with the Institute of Directors South Africa to help startups with their corporate governance needs. He's a regular speaker at various startup events, including South Africa Innovation Summit, Africa Arena, South Sarema. Sarema is the equivalent of Curie in France, UB Global World Incubation Summit, as well as other industry events involving entrepreneurship, social impact, and business leadership. Prior to Launch Lab, he was part of the startup team at Apologix from 2012 to 2015, where he was instrumental in taking this fledgling team of 12 from struggling to break even to a team of more than 30 and approximate 50 million acquisition by the WPP Group. His undergraduate studies were in business science at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, which was completed in 2013. He also holds an MBA from the East Carolina, where he obtained in 2013. He's a serious runner, having completed several ultra marathons, including 2 Oceans and Comrade. He is a winner, he is a wine and coffee enthusiast and a continuous reader and learner. Probably that's not far off when I made the mistake, said winner. It's true. Welcome, Brandon. Our next panel member is Dr. Anton Bota. He's a physicist, a strategist, a future thinker. He runs Technoscene, a company founded in 1989 and consults in the realms of science, engineering, and technology and innovation. He spends a lot of time imagining the future, creating images for his clients of what is to be. He sees knowledge as the new currency and constantly seeks for understanding of how we will live, work, play, and transact in future. He's also a part-time academic at the Graduate School of Technology Management at the University of Pretoria, an extraordinary professor in the Department of Industrial Engineering at Stellenbosch University. Currently, he's the acting center manager for Tax Innovation, a technology-based incubator and accelerator at the University of Pretoria. Tax Innovation assists technology startups to align their business model and value proposition with markets to become resilient and sustainable businesses. Being an entrepreneur himself, Anton believes in high-value small and medium-sized businesses will drive economies of the future. Definitely subscribe to that. Welcome, Anton. Our next panel member is Dr. Janine Chanston. She's the chief director for the Technology Transfer and Innovation Support Office at the University of the Northwest. She is a registered tech transfer professional and is a committee member of the Southern African Research and Innovation Management Association, where she previously served as the vice president for innovation and technology transfer. She's involved in activities of the Africa-Europe Innovation Partnerships and the French-South Africa Tech Transfer Bridge 2020. She also serves on the Alliance of Technology Transfer Professionals Course Review Committee and has developed, reviewed, and/or presented a number of training courses for SARIMA. Previously, she worked at the University of Cape Town's Technology Transfer Office and at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research Licensing and Venture Office. Prior to this, she was responsible for monitoring and evaluation of projects and investments at the Technology Innovation Agency. She holds a PhD in chemistry, Masters of Management in Entrepreneurship and New Venture Creation, and a certificate in leadership. And definitely, last but definitely not least, our panel member, which is Neil Nkolisi. She is the CEO and founder of Tridimo. Tridimo is pioneering the use of novel connected technology and data-driven approaches to enable early detection of health risks among farm livestock. Their vision is to empower farmers globally with data insights that will help them monitor livestock health and welfare through the provision of globally traceable animal biometric identity and the use of infrared precision livestock imagery to provide actionable insights and connect farmers with their livestock and give them convenient livestock management tools. Thank you very much. Welcome to all the members of the panel. This group's going to prove to be exciting, but I don't see Neil, and probably she's going to be joining us, quite soon, hopefully. Right. Now, let's start the conversation. In the beginning, I mentioned briefly, the history of the development of these incubation programs. I know that there's quite a lot of examples of successful technology-based enterprises, some coming out of universities. And of course, these examples clearly made a case for incubation in general and university incubation in particular. I know most of us that are presented sort of in part of the panel, our incubators are relatively new. But are there examples of success that you can point out, of companies that have come out, of the incubation programs that are actually making it or have made it? And if you can also, in that, what are some of the ingredients as the incubator, managers that you have been able to put in that have actually account for this kind of successes? Right. I'll ask perhaps Brendan and Leslie can take on this question first.
Happy to let ladies go first there, Leslie, unless you want to throw me the ball.
And please follow soon after. Look, I think, one of the difficult conversations that we need to bridge in South Africa is when how we look at tech transfer from within university and what are those IP laws that are associated with it. I do think that we're starting to see a bit more flexibility, but there are, I think, national laws that are preventing us. So at Simologon, we do have a blend of entrepreneurs that come and researchers from the university, as well as public ventures. And from our end, we're seeing the entrepreneurs from the public are moving quite fast and using, the ingenuity of both knowledge and commercialization. If I look at one of our entrepreneurs, Neo Hutiri, he started off in difficult times, and he basically looks at, using language, he sets up locker systems within township-based clinics where someone can come off the street and use a one-time PIN to get their medication out of a locker system instead of waiting in long queues from 4 a.m. And especially because of COVID now, he has scaled to over 60 locations in the past year. So those are success stories doing super well. If I look at some of the redesign we've done in our own programs in the past year, or in 2019, we're starting to see the fruits of that. So we've raised over about 12 million Rand that's gone directly into capital of our entrepreneurs. So the corporates and private sector is really taking interest in what is coming out of it. And I would love to see far more, undergraduate support on entrepreneurship development within universities.
Awesome. From maybe the different side of things is, there needs to be an incubator and a university-based thing that speaks to multiple different angles on this ecosystem. So probably our biggest success to date is a satellite company called CubeSpace, built on 30 years of aerospace work at Stellenbosch University, and then they build control systems for CubeSats. And these are little satellites the size of a loaf of bread, maybe 2 baguettes if you contextualize it to the audience here in France. And so they've put up more than 200 of their components into satellites on various missions, on rockets shot from India and Texas and all over the place. And so that one in particular, it's a team of scientists and engineers, engineers, that are really, really clever in their thing. And I think the key ingredient there is that they were able to see we're really great engineers and we're terrible business people. Because normally what you get, at least with maybe certain pockets of academia, is I'm a PhD, I'm the most clever person in every room I ever walk into in my niche field, so I must be the most clever person in everything, whatever I do. And we know it's just not the case. So with this company in particular, I guess the head person that founded the company, he was a professor, and he was happy to defer running the business to a master's graduate and a team of master's graduates. And even those master's graduates were able to say, we're engineers, we're not business people. We need input from the Launch Lab team on how to run a business. And we didn't run it for them. We gave them the tools and mentored them into not the technical side, but the operational side, the people side, the finance side, those things. And they've been in operation for 3 financial years now. Each year they've paid a 7-digit dividend to the university from their profits for a 20 or 30% shareholding. So that's the biggest success story. And I think to learn from that is the technical founders need to be humble enough to understand they don't know how to run a business. And then the incubator also cannot steal the learning of how to run the business. they need to make sure that they're mentoring that back into the company.
Thank you very much, for that, Leslie and Brandon. And anybody else wants to add from there? Because I've got a question, just on what you mentioned, Leslie. Perhaps maybe we should expand on that, because I think that's something that is quite important. Because one of the things that you mentioned was we need far more support, particularly for undergrad, undergrad support for entrepreneurs. What would that look like?
Sure. I think there's some phenomenal work coming out of South Africa's postgraduate research base. But like Brandon said, they're great from a technical, great from an engineering perspective, but really need to play a lot of catch up in terms of being entrepreneurial. And, one of the key conversations I've had with some professors that when I spend some time at MIT is that you've got to create critical thinkers and problem solvers. And, there is sometimes this gap in getting engineers and coders from behind their laptops or outside of the lab and actually going to the market and connecting with the problem in the field, so that whatever you are developing is contextually relevant, but you also have market validation. And there is this journey you go on constant validation and testing and building the business while you're building and advancing the product. And, sometimes I get concerned with there's too much obsession around the product development and then, sorting out IP and then going to market and trying to find a buyer. Whereas, within the incubation world, we do understand that is a parallel process.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Leslie. Maybe let's move on to because we'll come back to some of this, because I just think that there's quite a lot, particularly in what Pascal said, right? But now moving on to the next question, right? It's linked very much to the first one. What are some of the critical success factors to building a viable, impactful, and fit for purpose incubation program? What are some of the key ingredients that you need? I know that Pascal alluded to some of this, because the question that I had was hello, is that me?
Okay, thank you, Ayanda, for the question. I just want to preface it quickly by explaining our incubation model at Northwest University. Because we are looking at quite early stage technologies. So at the Tech Transfer Office, we would normally serve the university community, our academics and our researchers. But in the region where I'm at, we don't have tech incubators. So we have external inventors and aspiring entrepreneurs approach us for advice. And we realize that there's a need for some type of support program to help these prospective startups. So we started our program called Innovation Highway, which is really a pre-incubation program. I mean, most of our projects are pre-commercial, and some of them are even at the ideation stage. But I think some of the critical factors that, from my perspective, for our pre-incubation program would apply to the incubators as well. And for me, there are two main critical success factors. The first is the team. So building a startup business and providing incubation support or pre-incubation support for such is not for the faint-hearted. So we need team members that have perseverance, to keep on going despite the obstacles and the setbacks, who are proactive, who really go out there to try to make things happen, and who have passion, that is strong belief in the offering and the opportunity. So I've been very lucky in my team to have, team members who are sometimes even more enthusiastic than the actual entrepreneur for the entrepreneur's own idea and business. Secondly, I think the other critical success factor is, like with many things, boils down to the money and having the necessary funding to support the program. So it is really difficult for university-based incubators to become self-sustainable and to wean themselves off reliance on the university, for example, for salaries. So in our example, we relied on a 3 million rand grant, which is about 1.7 million euros. from the IDC to get this program running. And we put practically all of that into the projects in exchange for, some type of revenue share arrangement or for an equity stake, although we did do a few grants as well. We're now fully invested, but the entrepreneurs or the businesses are not yet making money, and it's still going to be quite a while before they actually do, and that we get some sort of return to put back into the program. So it becomes really important to use the available funding wisely and to drip feed the projects from milestone to milestone, and where possible to leverage for further funding wherever possible.
No, thank you very much, Janine, for that. The issue of building resilience, in a team, that's something that is really quite important. But I just wonder, from where I'm sitting, I think it's linked to what Pascal mentioned, earlier, around how do you do that because I would imagine that you would need people within the incubator themselves that have done it, that have got the T-shirts to prove that we have done it, and we have either succeeded or failed in this process, that have the scars, so to speak, right? How do you then find those people and bring them in so they can help to sort of build this resilience in a team, the startup team? Anyone, please?
That's not an easy thing to do, and you might have been through an experience, but then you get to the next business and it's a whole new set of problems again. So one has to just be flexible, and you've got to learn from your experience and learn from your mistakes, and then hopefully when you move on to the next one, you can provide better advice.
And if I can add to that, I think something that's very important to just always remember is the maturity of the ecosystem. And I think what you're alluding to is the fact that our ecosystem might be, in its infancy a bit. As the ecosystem matures, we'll get more entrepreneurs that have had successful exits that now don't depend on a salary, that can actually come back and plow back into the ecosystem. So I think for now, there's definitely a shortage of experienced entrepreneurs that are actually coming back and helping the young people actually build businesses. But I believe we're starting to see some entrepreneurs going through exits and actually coming back, offering some mentorship, offering some support. To 10 years, we'll get more to a stage where we have more entrepreneurs. But at the moment, it's a definite need that we need more entrepreneurs that can actually come back and work with the early stage startups and just walk alongside someone. The entrepreneurs we work with always say it's just the place they learn the most is from other entrepreneurs, be it people with them in the program or entrepreneurs that have actually walked the journey that can slot in next to them and just point them in different directions and give them different perspectives about what worked for them. So it's definitely a need in our market, and we should promote harder to get more entrepreneurs to come back and work with new founders.
Thank you very much.
Sure. If I may add at this point, so I agree with what Renee had to say. Maybe just to share that, with us, creating a sense of community is very important as soon as you join our hub or incubator. In fact, we run various kinds of programs at Simolokong, but we really emphasize that you are part of one community. So from entrepreneurs entering JVs, joint ventures, to employing each other, that is starting to happen with us over designing it. Get the community experience back, and even when people move out or move on or exit, they're still part of the community, and we always make sure that they're welcome from the get-go.
I mean, to most of them currently come back as an active mentors for
definitely. We are downtown Braamfontein, and so for some entrepreneurs that want to have a bit more of a sleek business space, they tend to move out to Stanton, and because that's where they do a lot of their business. But they keep coming back for other programs. We've also, set up a bunch of communities of practice, be it around virtual reality or AI and data analytics. So they keep feeding back into that space, because that is our point where industry, academia, and entrepreneurs meet. And it's interesting for them, whether they engage online or come back, they're always meeting new relevant people for their business. So there's value exchange, they're giving, also, continuously updating their networks and knowledge.
No, thank you very much, Leslie. Let me just quickly correct something before I ask my question, because I actually did not introduce Rene. My apologies. You see, he's the CEO of Friends South Africa, Tech Labs. Welcome, Rene. I was actually on the other screen. That's why I didn't see you was there. My apologies about that. So I maybe let's we'll probably come back to some of these questions. Because I'm just thinking around, how do you do that, in the era of COVID-19, build this sense of community. But we'll come back to some of these questions. Perhaps let's get on to the next one. Right. Now, what role does internationalization play, in our incubation program? There's a huge focus in our institutions, on internationalization. How do we really infuse this in our incubation program? What are some of the examples? What are some of the best practices there in terms of inculcating this in our incubation program? And perhaps maybe Anton and Rene can come in here. What are some of the things? How does internationalization find expression in your own program, and what has been the impact of that in your performance metrics?
Welcome to Kickoff.
Great, thanks, Anton. So what we look to do at Differential African Tech Labs is work with a lot of early stage startups. And now, as of recently, some of these startups have now gone on to later stages. They went through accelerator program, they've raised some funding, and they've become closer to what we would call established business. Now, the first thing I think is very important to understand is once a business isn't really established in a territory, it doesn't really make sense for them to look abroad and go and expand on that side. So I think that's one of the big challenges. A lot of the internationalization efforts from South African startups were around startups that were really not that well established locally yet. So what we're looking at now is we're part of a program that is the Horizon 2020 European Commission. It's called Enrich in Africa, so it received funding from there, and we are developing a soft landing program where we are actually working with an incubator in Paris called Bondinor, and we are taking 10 African startups to France and bringing 10 startups from Europe to Cape Town, South Africa, and we're doing a 3-month program where we're going to help them, connect them, network with them, support them, introduce them to partners and potential clients. But this is for businesses that have been established. So we're looking at businesses that have been trading for 2 years, businesses that have revenue in excess of millions per year, businesses that have a certain size that can allow a founder to come and spend 3 months in Cape Town. Because if a founder cannot spend 3 months in Cape Town to explore opportunities, link with local, the chances of internationalization effort being successful is just too low, and then it just becomes a wasted effort. So that's what we're working on at the moment, looking at more established businesses that have been going for a few years, businesses that can afford a senior person within that company to actually spend a significant amount of time in that territory, and a business that can actually afford the fees of doing it. It's quite expensive for a South African company to be going to Europe and setting up shop there and spending a lot of time. So you cannot expect a business that is in its early stages, still not profitable, still not generating cash flow that can support something like that, to try and establish in a different country when they haven't really found their feet in the local territory yet.
Yes, Amir, I agree with you specifically on the maturity of the business that has to get involved in such an exercise. We've got a whole range of startups that we look at, and I think one of the difficult things is to spot that maturity. When is a company ready to do two things when there's internationalization? The one is to actually go and see if there's a market and understand the specifics of that market, and understand what the value chains are and how you negotiate in the foreign country. The other one is to find the partners to help you to set up in that environment. And the partners is not necessarily equity partners, it's partners also within your more network supply environment. It's not a linear value chain that we are working with anymore. So you have to prepare these startups when they get involved in international engagements to think around the changes out there in the market, specifically the things that the 4IR brings along. virtualization that was accelerated by the COVID pandemic and the difficulties everybody is facing at the moment. So internationalization, at the company level is something that is very important, that a young entrepreneur understands, specifically in the university entrepreneurship development scenario, that they don't leave a university just with a certificate of knowledge, that they also leave the university with an understanding of how to use that knowledge in setting up a business. But furthermore, to not only be localized in their thinking, but to be part of a world market. So it's broadening that thinking, that understanding, and so on. And that brings about visibility for investment, obviously. That's the advantage of internationalization. The product must be addressing a crucial aspect of how people go about with technology nowadays. And we focus in Tux Innovation on technology-based business. And there's this notion of what is called a life world, an experience people have with technology. And how do you understand that in the context of different regions in the world? But I think something at a higher level in terms of internationalization that's very exciting, and I've seen in terms of the emerging valley context, in terms of bringing people over continents in contact to develop business. I've seen this happening within research infrastructure, where I worked with Horizon 2020, actually 7th framework before that. And that is what we call, in those days, we called it science diplomacy. But I think we can call it entrepreneurship diplomacy now, which actually means that also between governments, and it doesn't always have to be initiated by government, but the fact that businesses start working together and growing together and learning together is part of building up this understanding between different cultures, between different approaches to business. Just very quickly, what we are actually in the process of setting up between Tux Innovation and IMT in France, the Institute of Mining and Telecoms, is what we call a French-South Africa cross-acceleration program. This is supported by the Embassy of France in South Africa, financially as well. It is something that we developed on a broader agreement between the University of Pretoria and IMT to look at exchange, at academic level, at teaching level, at R&D level, at innovation level, but also at entrepreneurship level. Sort of this other element now comes in. It's a competition that's being run at the moment. We're trying to identify that company that has the maturity to actually go and explore overseas. So there will be a company from France coming to Tux Innovation. There will be a startup company from South Africa going to one of the incubators in the IMT group. And we're very excited about that activity to learn from it. And then obviously the intention is to expand that exercise and bring more companies in online, and also to meet them with similar connecting activities or exchange activities that we will be building up among the different participants in there. So great excitement about internationalization or globalization of entrepreneurship, bringing companies to the international scene earlier, but also exposing them to industry and not only to incubation. Get as fast as possible. Thanks, Ian.
No, thank you very
Even
much.
me.
I see quick, okay. Leslie and Pascal, go ahead.
So, sorry, Pascal, next time. So we'll have a bit of a different approach. So we have a number of examples that, yes, where we work with several embassies, where we're part of a variety of networks within Africa to also look at cross-border trade and support between hubs. And our most successful intervention on the international field is actually our partnership with the Institute of France in SA, as well as AFD, where we've launched our digital content hub together. So maybe just for context, Simolacom defines digital innovation as this intersection between hardware, software, and content. But we also have both incubation programs and skills development programs for each domain. So within our digital content hub, we focus on animation, gaming, web series, virtual reality, mixed reality. One of our programs within there is Digital Lab Africa, which is a Pan-African incubation program. And what we do there is we provide mentorship, mixed mentorship with industry experts in South Africa as well as France. And our entrepreneurs go for at least a 1-month residency in France. So it's really kind of like early stage where we're already from the foundation of you building your business, infusing it with international access. We've also just recently launched a market readiness program to prepare our entrepreneurs to go pitch at international markets. So if you go to a place like Annecy International Animation Festival, all the top studios in the world are there. You are competing against the best for contracts. So we need you to have that skill from the get-go. We cannot wait until the business matured. So that was our first launch, but there's a lot more to come. But the results that we are seeing is that our studios and our ventures are getting international access immediately and contracts. One of our team members, Kang, who also is staff of Similar Corporate, who also has his own studio, he's just been accepted to go do his master's at Gobelin for a year while building his film, Mannerisms. A few of we've already worked on co-productions for Annecy. One of our films is officially selected to the Los Angeles Rocks International Film Festival. And I think, for us, the difference is building in internationalization from startup phase. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie.
Ayanda, I'll try to be quick. I can see the clock is ticking down. So yeah, just sharing, we have such a small market here. We have to build bridges internationally. And similar with the Embassy of France, we have an MOU with Innovan, that's a wine innovator in Bordeaux, as well as the region of Bordeaux and Bordeaux Techno West, an incubator there. And we've sent one of our companies, our startups there, that's got it's a little solar powered pruner that's driving around vineyards, trimming all of the, growth between the vines, as well as a company called Nima Bio that's using nematodes to fight pests and things in the vines. Mm-hmm. We've also received, and just as exciting, we want to send our things overseas. We've also received vegetal signals that's measuring the pressure on the vines that influences the flavor of wine. And we're a great testing ground, and we have a reverse harvest season from France, as well as UV boosting that uses UV rays based on a tractor that drives around the vines and zaps the pests and whatever else is happening that way. So seeing that, sending companies and receiving companies, South Africa is a great place for international startups to come and land in the urban setting, in the agricultural setting, rural, suburban, to get an access into sub-Saharan Africa. And especially aiming, when you focus on like Chimolachong, digital and animation, and we focus on agriculture and health, when you can focus on those things, you can really build stronger bridges, and you can get meaningful partnerships where you have more than an MOU. You can say, these companies went, we received these companies, the ones that we sent are, they're gaining customers, they're earning millions of euros. The ones that come here, we can say we've hooked them up with clients and customers and joint ventures, and they're growing their revenues in Southern Africa too.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I've got a follow-up question, but I think let me bring in Excel in this case, because he's also, question touches on internationalization. So Excel, you represent Business France, and you support the establishment of foreign companies in France from Africa. Could you tell us about the mechanisms that are in place?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ayanda. So Business France is, as you said, the national agency supporting the international development of the French economy. And we are a French company to develop abroad and to invest abroad. And of course, our goal is to attract foreign investors in France. France, as you know, is thank you all the delegates to mention the links between France and South Africa and Africa globally. France is implementing many pro-business reform, reducing corporate taxation, transforming the French social model, accelerating business setup. This is in order to stimulate competitiveness and innovation. Regarding the mechanism that are in place to promote the internationalization of African startup in France, there is many, but I will only mention 3 of them. The first one is the state aid in France that is available at all levels regarding the research tax credit. This is, I think, the most attractive. France is the most attractive country in terms of its research tax credit. This is a tax for the tax credit for expenses incurred of carrying out research operation, and 30% of eligible expenses are refundable up to a limit of 100 million euros. Of course, to qualify for this research tax credit, you needed to have a legal entity in France, a subsidiary, and you have to make sure that your research is innovative. That means something that has not been developed before. I would like to mention that foreign businesses in France employ nearly 1/4 of all researchers. It's huge, really. The second mechanism I would like to mention is that France has implemented a number of favorable measures to welcome foreign talent. From a multi-residence permit for talented recruit and their families. It's called a talent passport visa, and it's a 4-year renewable residence permit. And of course, as you know, France offers high quality social security and attractive expatriate tax for expatriates. And the last one, the first one I would like to point is what you know, what we call in France the French Tech, which is an ecosystem made up of entrepreneurs, investors, engineers, designers, developers, associations, bloggers, media, etc., incubator as well. So players involved in the growth of the startup community. You know that President Macron affirmed France's ambition is to become a startup nation, and that the digital technology is at the heart of the economic recovery in France. So welcome in France to all your startup and your companies.
Oh, thank you very much, Exa. And it seems as if, I mean, there's quite a lot of things, that, perhaps France has. And there's quite a lot of already, within the system, collaborations, to enable, the mobility and support. But 2 questions that I have, for everybody here is beyond just, one of the things that Renier mentioned was the issue of maturity of our system, right? And I'm just thinking that, is there anything that we can do, to actually bridge that gap by using these international linkages, right? Not just from the perspective of established businesses that are seeking, soft landing opportunities, in France, that we can really facilitate that. That's one question. The second question that I have is, I'm looking at the continent, and I'm looking at the continent as also a potential market, right? Are there any linkages that we're forging with the rest of the continent. I mean, because if you look at the continent up in the East Africa, you've got Dar es Salaam, you've got Nairobi, that is quite an emerging innovation hub. The West Africa, Lagos, and some parts of Accra, North Africa. To what extent are we creating these linkages with the rest of the continent? I'm asking this question. I'm very mindful of where we are virtually. Anybody want to venture?
I feel like I'm speaking a lot, so I'm holding that. Simulacons has great relationships with several incubators and hubs across the continent. We have several of the managers visiting us pre-COVID to learn from our best practice. We've got a CC hub in Nigeria. They now have also set up a design lab in Rwanda, and they've brought iHub that actually started the movement around tech hubs. They continuously bring Simulacon into partnership agreements where there's actually been financial exchange. In 2019, a grassroots movement kicked off called the ATCG, the Africa Tech and Creativity Group. And it was, again, a Nigerian entrepreneur who sent out a tweet that went viral. A few months later, over 80 of us across the continent met up in Kigali, and we decided we're going to build the infrastructure to make sure that the Africa Free Area Trade Agreement works. We're not going to wait for the politicians to do it. But these are tech hubs, entrepreneurs, and creatives that we said we're going to bring the technology and bring in the expertise to make it work. So several bilateral relationships have spun out of that. And like I say, we've actually monetized it, and it's less than 2 years later. So I think there's high potential. AfriLabs is vibrant as well. There's a few other initiatives coming off. With us, Digital Lab Africa, that's a Pan-Africa incubator. Our next phase is to partner with hubs on the ground so they can do pre-incubation for people before they apply to our program. So I think there's a lot of potential on the continent, and I would love to see more South African players in those spaces. We're often the only ones at the table.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Janine, you want to say something?
The Africa-Europe Innovation Partnership, which is increasing the linkages between the tech hubs in Africa and Europe, but also through that program, it's increasing the linkages between the tech hubs within Africa.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Lex. I know that I'm very mindful that we only have 2 minutes, but this is I was just getting warmed up a bit. This was quite exciting. But let me pose this question. COVID-19 came. I know that we've got very little time. COVID-19 came. How has it changed your program, your incubation program? What is the impact of that? I know most people say that we'll never be the same again. We won't go back, but there are others that seem to think that what has changed? How
if I can quickly respond to this, we were blessed and lucky, I think, that we haven't lost any of our startups as a result of it. In fact, 2 or 3 of them grew unexpectedly as a result of opportunities they saw from the pandemic. I think it's the ability that people nowadays in general, but specifically young people, have to work together virtually and to still move forward that saved this situation. And apart from the nuisances of not being able to see each other, relationships and so on, I don't think much has changed. In fact, I think there was more opportunity than there was grief out of this whole thing, and we are blessed and we're lucky to say this.
Well, thank you very much, for that. So the colleagues, thank you very much. I think we only left with 40 seconds, and I know there's quite a lot of conversations to be had, around this particular topic. And for me, it's been really an eye opener because we're busy with our incubating program, But I'm sure that for everybody else, that is watching. They've benefited quite a lot from this. Thank you very much for making your time, to have this conversation with me. Thank you very much. We've got 15 seconds. Right. So
Thanks,
enjoy the rest of your day.
See you
Thanks,
all
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.